Hi everyone, I'm Catherine Kettle. Welcome to episode 2 of the Book Chain Project. Today, Hannah Gold interviews Clare Helen Welsh, who is an amazing and very prolific picture book writer. There is one thing worth mentioning. We did this live but lost the video, so we had to re-record. It's still fabulous. So you may not have seen a lot of this content before. And this is the first time I get to say it. Don't forget to subscribe and share and leave a comment. Tell us about your experience writing picture books. Tell us about your adventures. And if you're a fan of the books and if you want to talk about them, that is the place to do it. We will be sharing the podcast later.
Right, hello and welcome to the Book Chain. Last week I was being interviewed by Catherine Kettle, author of Boy I Am, and this week I become the interviewer as I am now interviewing Clare Helen Welsh. Just to introduce myself, my name is Hannah Gold. Oh, let's get the book, and I am the author of The Last Bear. So I'm with Clare tonight, and she's the author of 6 picture books, with about 8 more in the pipeline, 27 early reader books, and she's been agented since 2015. She's also the winner of the Screeby, I don't know how to pronounce that, Crystal Kite Award for The Tide in 2020, and also the North Somerset Teachers Award in 2019. So, Clare, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Hannah. That was a lovely introduction, and I'm really excited to be talking to you tonight.
Hey, so tell us a little bit about yourself and your books in your own words.
I was a primary school teacher for 14 years, and I left my position just last year in 2020. And I started writing in 2013, which was a bit of a whim, if I'm honest. Actually, it was a New Year's resolution. My friend Leanne and I every year choose something new to try, just something different, something to push ourselves, a new challenge. So sometimes it's like go kayaking or try, the dry ski slope or something, and those things haven't really taken off. But in 2013, I decided I'd try and write a children's book, and that's really how it started. And it just, I think it played to my strengths, it played to my interests, and I'm just so glad that I found the writing community, because I haven't looked back since.
I've got so many good questions to ask you about the community and about your journey. But one of the things I wanted to start with was probably like, I write middle grade and you write picture book and sort of early readers. And in kids literature, there's lots of kind of different sort of areas we can write in. But one of the things I think, regardless of age, that particularly connects myself and you is probably the way that our books share this emotional sort of intensity, or this emotional sort of journey of the main character's arc. I know in The Last Bear, it's very much about the main character April's feelings, her reaction to the world around her, her sadness, and this kind of really this sort of the strength and the power of her feelings. And I really wanted to write that to make other children feel that they could be permitted to feel strongly as well. So something that is kind of equally powerful in your own books as well, isn't it, Clare?
Yeah, I think emotional arcs and emotion generally isn't something that's talked a lot about in terms of, how to become a writer and what to put in a good book. We often have workshops about plotting and character, and to say obviously it is about character, but I think the emotional arc is key, because that's what your readers are connecting to. That's the resonance you have. And in a picture book especially, it's 32 pages long, so you have to sort of pack it all in so tightly and then end with that satisfying payoff. I think it does come from the reader connecting with the emotional journey of the main character. And like you've just said, emotions are a huge part of our writing. Even in something funny, actually, like Who Is That You? You've got to try and put yourselves in the main character's shoes. So being really clear about the journey is important. And personally, I've written a lot about personal experience. So the book The Tide that you mentioned is a book about dementia for families. And I've also written this one, which is called The Perfect Shelter. It's a book about living with a critical illness, illustrated by Oza Gilland, both by Little Tiger Press. And they both really came from personal experience. And actually, if I'm honest, I wasn't actually writing them to get published, these particular books. I was writing for myself in a cathartic kind of way, because we were having some challenging times, as I was writing those texts. obviously I'm delighted that they were, something resonated with, with my agent, with my publisher, with readers. And I really hope they can go on to support people going through hard times, as we found comfort from, and I especially found comfort from writing the stories.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really like a big picture book fan. I'm not a picture book reader, sorry, because obviously I don't have children, so I haven't really read that many. And maybe I don't understand them that much because obviously I'm that much more older. But I picked up your book, The Tide, because I knew that we were chatting, and I was just kind of like really blown away, swept away, to use a tide metaphor. Okay, like it's so, you've managed to pack so much into so little, and it's, yes, obviously the pictures are gorgeous, but just, the writing and the emotional journey and the fact that you really get to feel for this kind of tiny girl in the space of what is essentially 12 pages, whatever it is, and it's just, I think you've just done such an incredible job. So I'm not surprised it's gone on to win awards, because I don't know, I was just so impressed by it. I thought, wow, I was really taken aback from a middle grade point of view of actually how much you can achieve in a shorter book. I was really, really impressed. So in terms of like picture book writing, moving on to that, what are the differences then? How do you approach it? Do you storyboard it out? What comes first?
I think my process has developed a lot over the years, and also because I was a primary school teacher full time for a long time, I had to learn to be really efficient with how I worked. So I've really honed my process over the years, and now I don't start writing a picture book unless I can really distill the premise into one line, 2 lines tops. But if I can't really get across what the whole point of the book is and what the takeaway for the reader will be in a line or two, I don't start, because I feel like I haven't really got to the nub of what the main story is about. And that's critical, because like you said, you've only got 12 double pages, 12 spreads to tell your story. So you need to kind of be so focused and so streamlined. There's no room for error. I think what I used to do when I started writing was sort of find my way a bit more. So with my first picture book, it was called Aerodynamics of Biscuits. It's about pirate mice, a boy in the middle of the night, a missing biscuit tin, a cheesy pirate ship, they go to the moon, like everything happens. And I didn't plot that one. I'm sure you're probably not surprised. I literally sort of wrote and thought, what would be really surprising now? What will readers not expect on the next page? But that meant that I had a lot of editing to do, because a story needs a really clear journey for the reader to follow.
Plot, storyline, backbone, as it were, whatever the length.
So now I make sure I have that pitch line before I begin, and I don't tend to storyboard unless there's a particular reason why I need to. So for example, one of the picture books I was writing was very reliant on the illustrations. Only, I think, it's about 150 words in the whole book. So for that I did mock up a dummy just to make sure I had the pacing right. But on the whole, I tend to just think visually in terms of scenes, a bit like a movie, like an animation, not in loads of detail, and then just work on a Word document, really. Trick my brain actually into thinking this is easier than it actually is. I sometimes write sort of the first couple of spreads and then the last spreads, and then come back and fill in the gaps, and before you know it, you have the first draft.
Yeah, I suppose in a way I really like that whole idea of like distilling it into like a one-line concept, and I actually think that's true regardless of what genre you write, because even so much of adult fiction now, it's all about this one-line pitch and high concept books. It's kind of like where the market's moving a little bit in a way, and even like The Last Bear, it's kind of, I actually think it's like a really simple story, but it is about like a bear getting stuck on the island called Bear Island. So I think that whole concept thing is really powerful. In terms of like working with illustrators, this is what I'm always really fascinated about. Like in my naivety, before I kind of was paired up with Levi Pinfold for my book, I thought we would sit down over a kind of a cup of virtual coffee, become busy mates, and sort of chat about it. And obviously that didn't happen, Claire. I've never met him. It all went through the art, the art designer. But is it a bit different with picture books? Do you get you must work with a few different illustrators as well, I imagine.
Yeah, but I don't think there is a lot of difference actually. No. I mean, first of all, I haven't published any books yet that the illustrator has been in the same country as me. So, we've got Nicola O'Byrne is in California, Sophia was in Greece, Olivier Talac is in France. So obviously, logistically, it's hard to just get together and have a natter, although easier via Zoom. But really, I think the editorial team and, the publishers don't want you to mess up. They've got a very clear vision. We're in great hands. They know what they're doing. They're the go-between for us. And I do have lots of involvement in terms of there's a lot of tweaking of the text as the illustrations come in. You know, we're flexible, things change, but it's all done via somebody else. Yeah, so I do always send a little email to the illustrator after the end of the project and just thank them for their amazing work, because it's wonderful to see your words come alive, as I'm sure you know.
It must be like a real, I was going to say, you know, in terms of being a picture book writer, what is the biggest joy just seeing the finished product with the pictures and your words? Is that it, or is it getting the reaction from the readers?
I mean, I'm a really indecisive person, so I don't think I can narrow it down to one thing. It all just feels absolutely amazing, like from start to finish. I do like seeing the thumbnails come in, especially if the artist has done colour thumbnails, because you start to see the tone and the style of the book. That's always really special. Seeing the cover for the first time is a really great moment. And then obviously school events for me are probably one of the best things about actually being a writer. I
suppose because you're an ex-primary school sort of teacher, it's almost like second nature, because I know maybe some authors or debuts, speaking for myself, you know, when you go into school for the first time, it's actually like, ironically, one of the things that you can get a little bit nervous about. So yeah, I imagine, and I've only done a few virtual visits so far because I'm so early on in my career, but I imagine for you it's probably really in your comfort zone to do that, and you get a lot of joy from it.
I do get a lot of joy from it. I always get really nervous before. I mean, I'll be the one that's there an hour before. When I do a library event, my friends laugh because I'm there half an hour before it's even opened, because I just like want to make sure I'm there. So I still get those nerves, but I think you can use them. You know, you can use that excited feeling. Someone told me once that the feelings you have when you're nervous are actually the same feelings you have when you're excited.
Yes.
You're interpreting them in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
So I do get nervous, don't get me wrong, especially because everyone's different. You know, you're going to a new school, you don't know what's the text going to be like, you don't know what the children are going to be like, what are the teachers expecting. There's a lot of things that are unknown. But overall, I've never come away from a visit and felt bad. You know, it's a really uplifting, wonderful feeling to see, you know, to inspire and see children enjoying your story.
That actually kind of leads me on. There's a couple of different kind of topics here. One is the fact that I think we'll talk about later, like using the text as a springboard for kind of classroom activities. But I just wanted to backtrack a little bit, because I think some of the people watching this are maybe like me, who've literally just got a deal and they're just publishing, as we're literally at the beginning of our author journey, or people who haven't quite had their breakthrough yet and they're still knocking on the door. So even when I look at, you know, you, Claire, and you're obviously sort of so much further along the author path and you've got this experience under your belt, and I think people might look at where I am and other debut authors and think, oh, I'd love to be there, and they might, you know, look up to you in a certain way, not in an egotistical way, but where we are, we're looking up to people like you. So is there, and also I know that you are the Write Mentor writer in residence, so I just wanted to kind of cover that. First of all, like what advice would you give out to somebody like myself just starting out, or somebody seeking their breakthrough? And can you talk a little bit about the Write Mentor and writer residence thing, maybe even explaining what Write Mentor is for people that don't know what it is as well?
Yeah, okay. So thinking back to the first part of the question you asked me, which has now just gone out of my mind, was
advice you would give.
Oh, advice. Okay. Yeah, well, I appreciate that I do come across as someone further down the line, but I don't think that imposter syndrome ever really goes away. Sorry to say.
No,
you know, I still feel
that's
like
not the right answer. Let's delete that. Start again.
I still feel like, you know, a reasonable newbie. Yes, you know, you've had books that are published, but everyone is a bit different, and you know, things keep changing. So I never really feel like I have a handle on exactly what I'm doing. We're all just sort of trying to find our way through, and I certainly don't feel like I've like made it, but I do feel really proud of all the achievements that, you know, that I've had, and so that's good. But yeah, I think it is it's the nature of the beast, isn't it? You never really probably feel like how other people see you, perhaps.
I think, you're right. That whole, I always remember like knocking on the door for ages and just feeling like, well, why aren't I getting my breakthrough? And I had 2 YA books I wrote before this book, and I got, you know, close, but I didn't get close enough. And the feeling of kind of, when you get the rejection, it can be so soul destroying. And I remember just feeling so upset and just heartbroken and wondering why is it not happening to me? You know, why aren't I being seen? Am I not talented enough? Am I not good enough? You know, and you do really get into a spiral of questioning your own self-worth, which I think is the biggest learning for me, like realizing, if people say no to me, it's not a reflection of me as a person. You know, it doesn't mean my self-esteem needs to take a battering. It doesn't mean I'm any less worthwhile as a human being. It just means for whatever reason that they didn't want this book. And actually getting that knockback a couple of years ago, or 4 years ago now, for my old YA book, if I hadn't have gone that, it never would have propelled me to get the breakthrough for The Last Bear and change tack. So yeah, it's just kind of like, knockbacks, they can be your biggest sort of breakthrough in a way sometimes.
Absolutely. And when I go into school visits, I always bring that up, because I sort of do a timeline of my journey and where I started. And I visibly remember sitting in my living room and saying to my husband, is it ever going to happen to me? Because it felt like it never was. And I didn't even remember when it was. I just wanted some reassurance that I was doing something that was worthwhile for me. Like, do I have talent? You know, am I ever going to get there or not? Of course, no one can tell you. But when I go into school visits, I sort of talk about the journey that I've had. And I entered a competition called the Greenhouse Funny Prize. And I always say to students, do you think I won? And they all, of course, they all go yes. But I actually came second. Right. And that was a massive turning point. Because I got placed, you know, shortlisted for it, which was amazing. Couldn't believe it. An absolutely wonderful feeling. And then I came second, and I was obviously a little bit disappointed because I got so close. Afterwards, though, I think there is some kind of research that people who come second actually have that fight, that drive, that resilience. Think, well, I was so close, and now I've got the motivation to take it one step further.
Yeah, go onto the podium, as it were. Yeah. So I you know, going back to the right mentor thing, like what's interesting about our pairing is that actually we didn't meet before this interview, before this chat, but I've seen you kind of in the community, you know, because we see other people, and you've always come across to me as someone like really caring, and someone that actually just reflects. Now, I've read a couple of your books, you absolutely reflect who you are in the books. You're very caring, you're very giving, you're very generous with your time. So talk to me about being the right mentor, writer in residence. What is right mentor, for some people that don't know what it is, and how's that been for you?
Yeah, okay, good question. So right mentor is something that I wish had been around when I started out. And when I started, actually, I was sending out work without anyone's support, without any critique, any feedback. I did join the SCBWI, which was brilliant. And similar to that, Right Mentor is an organisation that runs courses, critique groups. There are things you can sign up for and pay for. It's really well priced, I think.
It's very, very cost effective, like for mentoring or like submission courses for it's all kids literature, isn't it? Picture book, MG or YA. It's focused in the kidlit community.
That's right, and all run by authors, so who are sort of imparting what they've learned over the years to other people, because that is the key. You know, you send your work out on submission, and if you don't get any feedback, you don't know what you've done well to replicate that again, but you also don't know what you're slightly missing. And that's really hard, because like you've just said, it's not necessarily that your idea was wrong, that you're not ever going to make it, that there's not loads of potential in your idea, but without that feedback, you're really just shooting in the dark. So Right Mentor, I think, has sort of stepped into a hole in the market, runs courses, conferences. Actually, it's just a community of people. Even if you haven't joined up to any of the things that you can pay for, on Twitter, there's just a huge community of people who will be like, I've sent a story on submission today, you know, just troubleshooting, support. And that's what you need, because it's a really, really tough job, you know, that you put yourself into, and there are people everywhere who know exactly how you feel, and that is really important. I think that in stories as well, and in general life, you want to feel like you're not the only one who's feeling the way you do, just so that you have some kind of, I don't know, acknowledgement that you're feeling
as well. I think also it's like the kidlit community is actually a really kind, nurturing community. in and out of Write Mentor. Write Mentor is kind of one sort of corner of it. I didn't come through Mentor. I just came to the slush pile with my agent. So there's still loads of different ways to get agents and publishing deals for those watching and waiting through their breakthrough. Write Mentor is a fantastic way, but it's not the only way. And the Kidlit community as a whole is such a kind of just such a really warm, supportive, friendly place. So I think what it reminds you of is that you're not alone. Anytime that you maybe get a near miss, or you get a rejection, or you get a long listing, or you don't get a long listing, or an agent just kind of like, you meet an agent but they don't necessarily want you, or you're out on sub but you don't get the deal, you're reminded the whole time that actually these experiences are universal.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I potentially could have felt like I'd lost a huge part of my personality when I left teaching, because I loved my job and I loved working with other people. And I would, if you'd have told me that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I would have felt like I wouldn't have enjoyed it, because I would have missed out on interacting with people. But there's not a day that I felt lonely at all. It's it's amazing to work with writers, to feel like you're giving back, to see when they then get long listed in competitions, you feel like you've made a difference. And that is a really,
and that says a lot about you, because like I said, you're so giving and caring, and I know there's a lot of support for you. When we were doing this chat, people are like, oh yeah, Claire, so I know you probably mean a lot to a lot of different people, and not just to children. So just talking about let's go on actually to your book. There's a couple more questions I wanted to ask you, one about your books, one about success, and then we'll kind of wrap up. So we've talked about The Tide, but actually you sort of moved into non-fiction sort of picture books, haven't you, in the recent sort of years? And this one came out last year, which is Pooh, is that you? And then you've got coming out shortly, We It Wasn't Me. And what I love about these is they're kind of like factual. They teach kids about something, really funny, but also kind of teach them about the outside world. And like you say, they're real springboards into sort of conversations and activities in schools. So what was the story behind sort of going down this route for you?
I think it came from writing about dementia and living with cancer. I kind of saw those as non-fiction-y kind of books. They were really easy to plot and plan, and I've spent a lot of time putting my hair out in terms of, which direction a plot might go. But it seemed really straightforward with those books, difficult issue books. There was only sort of one way the story would go. And actually non-fiction, creative non-fiction, like the ones that you've just shown, they're a bit more of a framework. You have to tell a story that's true. So you can't go off on all these different tangents. And I found that useful. And then it came from, I was with my daughter, and I love telling the story on school visits. The children are so shocked. But I was with my daughter, and someone did the unmentionable thing and made a horrible smell. And my daughter said, "Pooh, mummy, was that you?" And I never tell them whether it was or it wasn't. But that's how the story started, just with that phrase. And then I started researching animals that smell. And so it's a story. Essentially, it's a story. It could be read as completely fictional, but there are these facts interwoven. So it just so happens that the plot and the animals and characters we meet are true. And I think that kind of came from, because I knew nonfiction was growing, like that.
Really is a growing part of the market, isn't it? Yeah, for children's. There's so many amazing non-fiction books out. People really love non-fiction books. They're sort of just giving a different reading experience. So you were saying, you recognise that was a part of the market. Yes,
and also with my teaching hat on, I think I like to write books that I could have seen myself using. I used to love using books. I was teaching in reception, so every lesson came from a story, essentially, to give it a meaningful concept. And we always lots of role play and imaginative things with a story, and that was what I based all my learning on. So I wanted a book that, and I guess it comes from two angles. You've got some children that only read non-fiction and think they don't like fiction. This is a way in for them, because actually the facts in the back matter and everything is true. And apart from the learning on holiday, of course, I use a fictional character, but the characters you meet are true, and there's an element of truth in it. And then also you've got the children who think they don't like non-fiction. Non-fiction is boring, and actually this is the way of showing them that you can learn about this amazing world, but you can still do it through story.
Which kind of leads me on to that whole, so we talked about a little bit before, the sort of the symbiosis between being a children's writer and actually the relationship that we have with the schools. I think even when I was probably really naive, I'll be honest, I thought, I'm going to write a children's book, but I didn't think much beyond the text. I didn't think about the progression of my career. And actually, if we're talking about career progression, you're talking about when you're a children's author, you then end up doing these kind of like, you know, school visits. Could your text be used in a classroom? I know that The Last Bear is like really like your book, like really classroom friendly, because you can spark off lots of different ideas to empower and inspire, or just to educate. So that's one of the progressions as an author in career, which kind of leads me on to my next question. You having had, you know, been sort of doing this for 6-7 years now, what would you say has been your biggest sort of career highlight to date? Was it kind of, you know, winning the award, getting the first publishing deal, or what was it for you?
I think that's such a tricky question, because I honestly feel just that every day I just feel so lucky that somebody likes my writing enough to keep publishing the books, and I just feel I want to do it for as long as I possibly can, you know, and I don't know, I just feel so lucky every day, pinching myself that someone's given me this opportunity. Every time something amazing happens, I think this has got to be like the biggest thing so far, but then other amazing things happen. Yes, winning the Tide, winning those awards was.
That must have been so, like, I know, because it was a personal book for you.
Personal book, and also because the Tide, the Scooby book was members of the, you know, my peer network, all the people that I've met, you know, worked with, read their stories. It just felt really humbling that they'd chosen my story when, you know, I count them all as friends and peers. That was special. And with the Teachers Award, you know, I was a teacher, so to be recognised by that was really special to me too. I think if I had to pinpoint,
go on, we're going to put you on the spot. One, picking one now. Come on.
I think one that made one of the biggest differences to me, and how I felt about myself and how I felt about my writing career, would have been signing with my agent. That made the biggest difference to me, because it was almost someone was giving me permission and someone was recognizing that I had something. And until that, you just, like I said, shooting in the dark, you don't know whether I'm even talented, you know, should I just give up? So when I signed with Alice, it was really just some kind of personal satisfaction that I'm on the right track here. You know, someone sees something in you, and that just felt the world. But also working with an agent, as we know, is fantastic, because they're your mentor. They can see what you're doing well, tell you so that you can do it again, and when things aren't quite right, they can give you specifics so that you can work on them. And since I've been working with my agent, my writing has come on so much, and that really is down to her and her time and her editorial. So that's made the biggest difference to me, I think, both how I felt about myself and in my writing. That was a huge game changer, I would say.
Yeah, and I think getting the agent for me is probably one of the biggest highlights as well, because it's that moment of, you know, you're trying to get your breakthrough, and like we talked about earlier on, but you're not quite sure whether you're ever going to make it. So there's constant this is doubt, isn't it? It's like, will I get there? Am I wasting my time? You know, should I try again? And, you know, and I think when you get the agent, and for me, when I got my agent, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, it was like the first gateway, aren't they, to pass? And because I think almost the hardest gateway, because then they open up the world like that. But until you can get to the agent, of course, you can approach a lot of publishers direct, but the agent holds the key to many other publishers. Until you get them, it's kind of like a world opens up. And I think it is that first moment of external validation, which kind of leads me on to my next question. But it's kind of that sense of, I always believed, when I wrote The Last Bear, I always believed in it. I don't know about you, I just had this kind of instinctive feeling. I kind of knew it was going to be the book that would give me my breakthrough. I just knew it. And then when I sent it out to agents, obviously I got, you know, the inevitable rejections as well, you know, like standard rejections, no replies, you know, and then you get the, you know, I got some offers. But it was kind of like, oh yeah, you know, it was, I can really relate to why you think that's your kind of breakthrough moment, because it is that, it's just the start of it, isn't it? You got the before and the after. And for those watching who haven't got their agent yet, what advice would you give to them in terms of who are still chipping away, trying to get this breakthrough? What would you say to them?
I think give yourself a bit of slack, you know, believe in yourself. Like, yes, the agent is the dream, you know, and they can offer you, you know, open up a whole new world in terms of, especially if you want to get a career. But I think you have to be really careful. I mean, when I started out, I was very much publishing was my end game. I wanted to have a book published, and that's the only kind of success that I saw. But as I've kind of gone on, I think you just need to be a little bit kinder to yourself, because that's completely out of your control, whether someone takes on your book or not. What you can control is sort of recognizing the rewards you make along the way, submitting to a critique group, you know, sending something out on submission. These are all things that we should really be celebrating in ourselves, and that we can do.
Acts of bravery as well. Every time you submit to an agent, you know, it's an act of courage. Every time you have somebody else read your work, yeah, you're right. So you're saying basically celebrate the things that you are achieving, and the small steps.
Small steps, definitely. And then, you know, assuming writing makes you happy, you know, obviously take breaks when you need to, because it can be all encompassing, and looking around and seeing other people succeed can be tough. Rejections sting. You know, looking at friends that get their deals, get their agents, can also be really challenging if you haven't quite got there yet. So be kind to yourself, I think would be my biggest bit of advice. But also, if it makes you happy and it's your dream, don't give up, because writing is a skill, and you can learn the rules of a picture book. You can learn, you know, the constraints of what publishers are looking for. So
great
I think
advice.
Anyone can do it. Anyone can do it.
No, great advice. Okay, 2 more questions. In terms of success, even if The Tide hadn't have won those awards, which kind of ties into what you just said, would you have considered it a success anyway? It's kind of like when I wrote my book, I kind of thought it gave me back so much joy at a period in my life, but actually it hadn't been going well for me. So even if it hadn't have got the agent, I think I would always look at the last bit and be so proud of it, which kind of links into what you're saying about writing for joy. So yeah, do you think you would consider a book like The Tide a success in terms of what it had given it to you personally, even if it hadn't have won the awards?
I'd like to think that the answer was yes, but I also am aware that I've learned a lot about myself and, you know, and what I consider success over these years. Initially, it was all about, you know, the external praise, I suppose, but I've come to realize that it's as rewarding to have family say they're proud of you, to have people, you know, who are living with dementia in their family say this book really touched us. Those things are, you know, worth their weight in gold. Absolutely. Those are the moments that bring you joy. And actually, I've just started writing for older children. I feel like a massive fish out of water. I don't know what I'm doing, but I said to my critique partner the other day, I feel like even if this book didn't go anywhere, I love this. I love meeting up, sharing the next chapter, reading other people's chapters, them commenting on my own. The process of actually that collaborative process and sharing process, I absolutely love it. So even if the book didn't go anywhere, I feel like I've gained lots. So I think if writing makes you happy, happiness should be the success that, you know, idealistic. But
I think that really shines through from your writing and just this interview and who you are. It's about following your heart and your joy and doing things that sort of give you joy, but in the same breath can actually maybe help other people, give them joy as well. So a really amazing answer. Okay, so we've got one final question. So next week we've got Bethan, is it Bethan Evans?
Bethan Evans, that's right.
Yes, who was Necropolis.
That's
and
right.
So you're becoming the interviewer, and I'll be now sliding off stage. And so what one question do you think that we should ask, or you should ask Bethan about her book?
I've had the privilege of reading. I'm reading it currently, so I'm reading Bethan's book, and I'm really interested to know what gave her the idea, because it feels really stand out and different. So I'm quite interested to know how she wrote the premise, and also it's a YA book.
Yeah.
And people always say don't write YA. You know, there's
it's a tough market in the UK. I think YA.
So I'd be interested to know, did she know it was going to be a YA book when she started? Did she think about the fact that it was going to be YA? A bit more about her process, really.
No, I'm really excited about. I'm excited about that. I think YA is a tough market, and what I love about Book Chain is the fact you've got children's authors from different genres within Kid Lit, MG, picture book, and YA, but also you kind of got different authors at the different stages of their career. So I know that Bethan is like a debut like me. She'll be like the sagely one again and passing advice. That's your role at the moment. Everyone's been a debut so far. But is there anything final you wanted to say in terms of one bit of advice to anybody watching?
One bit of advice for anyone watching, I just think I mean, since we've been talking about emotional threads, I think if you can put a little bit of yourself into a book, you know, if that's something you're comfortable with, give it a shot. Even if it doesn't have to be necessarily like the whole of your personal experience. It might be, if you're just writing a scene, that you remember a time when you felt like that, so you can really bring in all those emotions and it feels authentic then. And I think just don't overlook how important the emotional thread is, because that's how you're going to, you know, connect with your reader.
Yeah, and I really relate to that because, you know, I think before, when I was younger, I was almost like a bit embarrassed about my emotions, and my dad would say, oh, you're too emotional, and it wasn't only until I wrote The Last Bear that I channeled these emotions and learned to express big emotions. So it was really cathartic for me. But yeah, so don't be afraid to put emotions into books, because people love it.
Yeah, they do. And also, when I was a primary school teacher, a lot of my role was supporting families and children through emotional well-being, running workshops, you know, leading the staff on sort of things that we could do to open up conversations about emotions. So it is so important to have that, you know, even if you're doing it, you can do it yourself in your writing. That's the first step, I think. And other people will relate to that emotion in the stories when they're being read.
People always connect to emotion. Music, art, you know, dance, writing, like you're saying. It's that sort of heart connection, isn't it, from one person to another? And yeah, I think emotions are just the biggest language, almost without words.
Absolutely, well said.
One thing I wanted to end on, because I was looking for other commonalities between us, and as I was looking through the tide, I couldn't help but find this picture of the polar bear.
The polar bear over in the garden. Yeah, well, that's an example of what I'm sort of saying about trying to put bits of yourself in, because it sets you apart from other people. So my son's favourite toy, always his favourite toy, was Poly Bear, we used to call him. So he's in that book too. So yeah, there are lots of little things that I think you can bring in from your own experience, because you're the only one who can write your story. And I think bringing out your uniqueness side of you,
I love that,
set you apart, I think.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, and I love polar bears. Claire, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure, not just to get to know you as an author, but to get to know you as a person. I know that you're incredibly inspiring to many, many authors, either in Write Mentor or otherwise, who are looking to you and looking up to you and being inspired by you and feeling like that you're giving them permission to sort of be unique too. And it's been a real just joy to get to know you, and thank you so much for giving up your time and being so generous. And I can't wait to see what's coming next and your foray into older fiction as well.
Possibly. Well, you've been a fantastic interviewer, you know, really put me at ease, and yeah, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. So thank you for inviting me.
Joy. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for watching.
Bye.
Welcome to Maclay's Jam Factory, the most inventive jam factory in the world, where chief inventor 9-year-old Scooter Maclay makes flavours like
cherry candy floss jam,
and
blueberry burst jam,
and
Brussels sprout jam. Ew.
But wait, what's that? An Alien in the Jam Factory by Chrissy Sains. Buy it now in a bookshop near you.
Marvel or DC?
But I do like Wonder Woman, and since it's been International Women's Day this week, I would say that Wonder Woman is my favourite.
What 3 books would you take with you to a desert island?
I would take the Northern Lights trilogy.
Okay, we can count that as 1 because it's a box set.
Fab. Then I'll choose Harry Potter because that's 8.
Okay, that's a really big cheat. So we've got like 11 books so far of our 3 books. What about the final book or box set of books?
I would choose, oh gosh, I don't know. It's really hard to pick books. I don't know. What did you say?
I think I can't remember. I think I chose Narnia. I also went for a box set.
Yeah, something magical with adventure. I'm going to say...
So it's not a picture book then, no. I've read that.
Obviously, I love picture books, but they'd be over so fast, and I'm trying to get the value for money here.
Yeah.
Who knows how long you're going to be on Desert Island for? So, I'm going to pick something that I read recently. Actually, currently, I'm reading Mort the Meek, and it's so funny, right, by Rachel Delahaye. And that's also going to be a series, so I'm picking that one. Mort the Meek, really funny. Would recommend it if you haven't seen it.
Perfect. I like those.
Thanks for joining. Don't forget to subscribe and share and hit the bell for some alerts for the next episodes. Next week, Clare Helen Welsh is interviewing middle grade writer Dave Cousins.
Marvel or DC?
Well, I had to look up what the differences were and what they meant.